Good morning. Welcome to FranNet and the Washington State Business Development Center's webinar series on franchise ownership. I'm Charlie Magee, your host today, and we're going to be covering, today's the first of three webinars that we're going to provide on franchise ownership. And today is part one, in business for yourself, not by yourself. In the slide that you see here, that's me on the left in the navy blue sweater standing next to my friend and client, Tim from Spokane, who attended an SBDC workshop years ago, later connected with me to take a look at some ideas, talk about his own situation. Did just a textbook job of due diligence and homework to find something that was a great fit, launched his business, set a goal of exiting the business in 5 years for attaining certain financial goals, and accomplished that right down to the month. In fact, the week that the buyer of his business moved in was 5 years from the time that he started. So I think of his experience as one for others to model. So anyway, it's great to have you with us today. As I said, I'm Charlie. FranNet of Washington is my business. We've been doing this for 8 years and have really enjoyed a great partnership with the SBDC here in Washington. Prior to starting franchise consulting, I was in the hearing care industry, working for a franchisor for about 3 years. And prior to that, Pearl Vision, a corporate and franchise optical retailer I'm sure you're familiar with. And I would say when I'm not working with clients, I have a great time with my family. This time of year, I'm trying to keep the moss out of my lawn, which it seems like a full-time project, and finding as many fairways as I can. FranNet, you may not have heard of, or maybe you have. It's been around for 30 years. There's 100 locally based consultants like myself across North America and Europe. We collaborate with groups like the SBDC and SCORE in an effort to provide good education to people about business ownership and about franchise ownership. And our value proposition is matching people who want to be in business with a franchise that meets their needs. And our consulting service is provided at no cost to our clients. We have a client bill of rights, which we feel great about and is a distinguishing factor within the industry. Okay, today's agenda. Why business ownership, the risks and rewards, the variety of options to consider, some common myths, and then the reality about franchise ownership. We'll touch on funding. In the next, so this is for, again, part one. In part two and part three, we'll get into, how do you find the right business for you? How do you consider your entrepreneurial DNA and your short, medium, and long-term goals? And finally, in the last session, we're going to kind of go a little more microeconomic, thinking about Washington and Western Washington in particular, with such great strong job economies, higher income, low unemployment, and a really tight commercial real estate market. What are some important considerations? So that's just a quick little preview of what's to come, but I'm excited about going through some basics with you today. So if you're on the call, there's some part of you that has imagined yourself as a successful business owner. I mean, maybe you already are, and this is not the first business that you've started, but probably more likely you've been working for others, and you're imagining, this is a path that I think I might like to go down, and I think it's worth detailing that a little bit for yourself. How would your life be better? What pain you would be removing, or what is it that you would be achieving or accomplishing? Sometimes I'll do this with clients as the look back. Let's imagine that you're 5 years down the road and thinking about imagining your home run. What would a home run look like to you and your family? And these are some of the elements that almost always come up. The foundational elements of flexibility, improved financial security, control. I hear, I want to be my own boss. I would add to that, be my own boss of a successful business. Purpose, mastery, and autonomy are the three pillars of what motivates us. That comes from Daniel Pink's terrific book, Drive, where, as much as we think it might be money or recognition, it really comes down to these three elements. How those are prioritized or how they interact with each other is what makes each of us unique. And I think it's fun to think about, what does that really look like for you? And, you can imagine all these, how your life would be better. It's not hard to do that. And yet, most people, almost all people that consider business ownership do not move forward with it, and they continue working for someone else. And when you think about why that might be, here's some of the legitimate concerns that people have, and at the top of the list is risk. A job in the very short term, it is usually going to be a safer bet than starting a business. The risk in a business, and we'll look at this a little bit later, is really in the beginning. It's in the launch. Finding something where you're not going to run out of resources before the business hits those important inflection points of becoming cash flow positive and being able to give the owner some financial benefit are absolutely legitimate concerns to think about. Another is just the capital that's going to be needed to start the business. And yeah, Charlie, I get it. All these terrific, wonderful things for my life once I'm in business, but do I really want to take some of my very hard-earned savings, maybe in a 401k or just liquidity that I've been accumulating, or leveraging, getting a loan for the business? Is that something that I might not be comfortable doing that? Another one is just, am I gonna know what I need to in order to move through a process of finding a business and opening a business? Can I do that efficiently and safe when I don't know what I don't know? That often stops the game right in its tracks for people. And then, do I possess the skill set? Do I have the core competencies that are vital to successfully launching a business? When I look back at my career and I think about, I've come up through sales, or maybe I've been in operations, maybe I've been an individual contributor more so than a team builder or a manager or a leader. How do I think about my own resume, my own story, and decide whether, I have what it's going to take to be successful? So I think well before the Great Recession, there was shifting winds, and the old uh, social compact between companies, employers, and employees has shifted. It's just that it's kind of shifted into high gear in the last 10 to 15 years. The old rule really was, you go to work for someone, you demonstrate your loyalty, you do your job, make your sales quotas, you meet your year's goals and outcomes, and if you do that, you will continue to enjoy employment by that company. And of course, for many years, that also meant a pension, that when you left the company, they would continue to have a role in securing your long-term future. The pension game really started to change a long time ago to 401ks, where yes, there were some matches, but really you as an individual employee, in this case, were responsible for accumulating your retirement security, what you would supplement to anything that the government might provide. And in today's world, after the revolution that's taken place in technology, in globalization, reaction to and adjustment from the recession, we are really in this, on our own. There are great companies out there in the U.S. There's great companies based right here in Washington, and it's important to think about your income security as much as your job security, because the perceptions about security in a job, and the realities of perceptions of security in a job have changed. Unless you're in an employment contract, which is unusual, your job at the end of a day, at the end of a pay period, I mean, that employer can shake hands with you and say, okay, we're square. You're paid for your time worked, and your services are no longer required. Your job has been eliminated. The company has reorganized. Your job is no longer available. These are things that I have heard myself, things that have been, on conference calls, and so it's not, it's not my father's world anymore. Can performance determine your security? Anyone who has had a job where they, the answer is no. When I was with Pearl Vision for 17 years and received a notice that my job was being eliminated, and in a kind of ironic twist, I had my performance review for that previous year about 2 weeks later, where I had the overall rating was exceptional performance, exceeding all expectations. So, this is not something that is in our control. And when you are shifting, changing jobs, sometimes by choice and sometimes not, what impact do those periods of unemployment and a lack of income impact your long-term financial plans? It creates some complexity to the math, and finding ways to have ongoing revenue is key to reaching those goals. So, what about the risks of business ownership? As I said previously, the risk is in the beginning. Now, true that you are not going to downsize yourself, you're not going to transfer yourself, you're not going to fire yourself. I suppose you could, but um, but you're at the wheel and you're going to grow your business at your pace. This is part of a conversation that happens frequently with clients, and it has to do with what is it that they're trying to accomplish. What is the level of income that they need, and how fast they scale the business will determine how quickly they can reach those uh, thresholds. Um, and not everyone's needs, not everyone's goals are the same. And so that's something where you can strategically determine how fast you want to go and how big you want to get. It's also true that the longer you are in business, the safer it becomes. It's interesting. It's really the opposite of a job. In I'll say the old days, in previous times, the longer you stayed in a job, kind of the safer you were. You had, you were on kind of the first page of the maturity list. The old joke, I'm kind of a big deal around here, um, was true. And if someone was going to get cut, it was often, the first person in. And of course, that's not true anymore. With businesses, the risk is in the beginning, but yeah, as you go further along, you can create uh, security for your business. And that business, what is that going to look like? What are your options? You can start something from scratch. You could buy someone else's business. You could start a franchise. You could invest in an existing franchise. This comes up sometimes, so I'll say people that are interested in starting franchises from scratch means they have already started a business and then decide that they're going to grow that business through franchising. And we're not going to get into the details of that growth strategy here, but that's where it fits into this spectrum. So pros and cons of starting a business. Let's do the pros first. Okay, yes, you are in total control. You're making the decisions. You can be as creative as you like. You're not making rules for yourself. Of course, there's laws that, of course you have to follow. And when it works, there can be a significant upside, huge. A lot of people will build businesses around their passions. Food, most often seems to be the example. Um, and the other side to the coin of those advantages is that, well, you do have to create all the systems. And if you haven't done that before, you really can't appreciate how challenging, difficult, and time-consuming and costly that can be. You have to create a brand. You've got to find a way to fund that startup. Lenders are not particularly excited about lending money for an unproven business. So that can be really challenging. It can take a while, which is part of the reason that new businesses have such a high failure rate. It's hard to know when you're going to be ready to go to market. And but that's an option. And there's people trying it all the time. Another option would be buying an existing business. A good business that's available for purchase is going to have good cash flow. They're going to have a reputation in the marketplace. You're going to have financial results to evaluate, usually 3 years of tax returns, 3 years of income statements and balance sheets. This can be more attractive to lenders, banks. They like to see those buyers have experience in that particular space and a range of other requirements, but it's a little easier than it is for startups. You've got a customer base. You conceivably have trained employees that are in place and might stay with you as a new owner. The systems critical, and often an owner, the seller, may be offering partial financing for the business, which can make it easier to acquire. If it doesn't have cash flow, let's say it's a business that at one time was great and had good owner benefit, but maybe the owner's taken their foot off the gas in recent years, revenues have started to decrease, the diversity of their customer base has weakened. It's all in the owner's head, kind of how the business works, and without that owner, it's less predictable what's going to happen. All of those factors usually point to decreasing cash flow. What is the reputation of the business? You have to kind of dig a little deeper than just what you find online. There may not have been organized and ongoing training and support for employees, which means onboarding a new employee could be a process of starting from scratch. Why the seller is selling. Sometimes it's hard to find that out. What will happen with the staff once the ownership changes hands, and how dependent is that particular business on those particular employees? Again, it kind of gets back to the systems in the business. If those are really strong, then that may not be as big of a concern. Is there a chance of that seller taking customers with them, or customers? What would happen if you lost a key customer or account to the business? Things to think about. And then, of course, higher debt service when you're needing to borrow money. That interest that you're going to pay, the debt service, the loan payments that you're making are a line item on your P&L. And when you buy an existing business that has good cash flow and kind of has the positive elements that I'm talking about, well, those businesses sell for, generally a pretty healthy multiple of the profitability of the business, the EBITDA. And for our purposes, if you want kind of a back of the envelope number, if the EBITDA is, let's say, $500,000 or less, the multiple on that those businesses sell for might be 3+, which is not a really useful useful thing for you to take out into the market, but just a frame of reference. Lots of different factors will affect that. But that's kind of looking at an existing business. The key is the icon here, and that means just imagine somebody, okay, the deal is done. Here are the keys to the business. I might be giving you a little bit of transition services. These kinds of things can be negotiated, but once a seller finishes with the business, they generally want out of there as fast as possible. And so there you are with the keys in your new business, and are you ready to take that business to the next level, or are you ready to preserve its cash flow? Finally, in a franchise, pros and cons too, branding, a proven business system, on training and support, beginning and ongoing, the lowest failure rate of the three options, according to the Small Business Administration, lower costs, um, financing options, sometimes from the franchisor, broad disclosure, and being part of a community, a family, a team, having fellow franchisees in the market to collaborate with. The structured operating system, the rules and obligations of franchisees can be seen as, can be onerous depending on the franchisor, something to understand. Territory restrictions, having exclusive territories in some cases means that, you're limited in terms of where you can grow your business. Limitations on what you could sell. The ongoing royalties is a cost line item for that business that you will not have with starting something from scratch or buying an existing non-franchise business. And when you exit, the buyer of your business has to be approved by the franchisor. So what is, if you don't know, what is a franchise? The franchise headquarters, that is the franchisor. That's the original business, comes often from a founder, and that's, think of it as, quote, corporate. That is the mothership of the business. The franchise operators are the franchisees, or the local franchise owners, are what those of you who are prospective business owners and you're thinking about franchising, you would be considering becoming a franchisee. And you would be serving the needs of your customers. They might be consumers, they might be other businesses, but those customers don't really care if you are a franchisee or if it's a franchised business or a corporate owned and operated business. They have their own needs in mind, and a good, strong franchise, it won't be apparent to a customer if it is a franchise or not. That's the sign of great branding and consistent ownership and operation. You are awarded a franchise license to use the branding, the products, the systems, and to do that within perhaps a given territory. Often the exclusive right to do that within a given territory, in exchange for an upfront franchise fee that you pay to the franchisor, and an ongoing payment, a royalty, which is most often based on the revenue of the business, not on the profit of the business. And usually it's a percentage of that revenue. In some cases, it's a flat fee. All of the details about that and nearly everything else about the business is detailed in what's called a franchise disclosure document, or FDD. There's a lot of information about the franchisor, who they are, where they came from, their experience, their balance sheet. There's detailed information about the cost of the investment, not just the franchise fee, but what are the other expenses that are going to be required in order to launch and operate the business. Detailed description of royalties, the franchise agreement, which is the in plain language, the rights and obligations of both parties, the franchisor and the franchisee. Which, I think it's good to think of this as a partnership. You're in business together, and each side of the partnership has a role to play. In the FDD, there's also description about territories and how they're awarded, how they're protected. There's information about past franchisees and current franchisees. Some franchisors, not all, will make a financial performance representation, and the franchisor is limited in what they can share with you regarding how much money you can make in the business or how fast will it hit break even. They can only represent what is in the FDD in the item 19 to gain a broader, more detailed understanding of how a business is going to perform. You generally need to talk with other franchisees to determine that. And renewals, terminations, transfer policies, these are the kind of the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? How can I avoid being in default of my agreement? When my business is going well and the term of my franchise agreement has come to an end, the term of most franchise agreements is 10 years. There are some that are shorter and some that are longer, but 10 is generally the number. What fees might I need to pay to renew that agreement? Are there any capital improvements or remodels that'll be necessary, so forth. It's worth underscoring that the process of validation, talking with people that have been in the business, they were standing in your shoes at one point, they made that decision to move forward, and learning about their experience is really invaluable in determining if this is the right path for you. Franchising myths. Number one, fast food, particularly in hotels. People think that's really all there is. And there's thousands of different franchisors in nearly 100 different industries. There were 16,408 establishments at the start of 2020 in the state of Washington. And you can see some of those categories: business services, personal services, anything that you might have done at your home, anything that somebody will come to your business to provide service for. There are franchises in almost all of those spaces, and things that you can't, that you wouldn't even believe. Myth number two. So the success is going to come strictly from the quality of the product. McDonald's is a great franchise system, but my bet is, I know you can probably make a better hamburger than their quarter pounder with cheese. So it's not the quarter pounder with cheese that's done it for them. It's their systems, the marketing, the sales, the operations, the accounting. And yes, of course, quality counts, but systems are really the secret sauce to that business and to every very successful long-term franchise. And the new franchises that are emerging and popping up, they are building their strength from the same thing, a foundation of strong systems. So some people feel like, hey, I've got to be in something new that nobody's figured out yet. There's no competition. That's the only safe way into business ownership. And it's really fragmented existing markets which are so attractive to franchisors. It shows that there is need in the marketplace for that particular service. I mean, competition is great. You're positioning yourself to be at an advantage in that fight for market share, and so that's what we're looking for in terms of where to put our energy. Franchises are expensive. I mean, sometimes people just don't look further because they read in USA Today, or there's articles all the time about the cost, particularly of fast food. Wendy's wants to see a $4 million net worth in order to talk with a prospect for a new franchisee, and and few of us, are in that, meet that kind of qualification. Um, but really, there's all kinds of great options that are under half a million. There's a lot of good options that are under $100,000 in terms of an initial investment. And this is all relative. $100,000 is a lot of money to nearly all of us, and not something that you would an investment that you would take lightly. But in a lot of cases, it is something that's doable. You generally need 25 or 30% of total investment, and can find funding or financing for the balance. That might come from your own savings. It could come from family or a partner, home equity lines of credit. Sometimes seller financing in a resale situation could be an option. And most widely used and probably most misunderstood is a ROBS. That's a rollover for a business startup, where you can use a qualified retirement account from a past employer to invest in a business, to invest in your own business. It's not a loan, you're not paying interest, and there's no taxes or penalties on making that rollover. And that's something we could share more information with you about. If I want to make a lot of money, I'm going to have to really sink a ton of money on the front end into this investment. And actually, there's no correlation between the size of the investment in the franchise and what you can actually make from it. The service businesses that are sales-driven businesses, which means they're going to have generally far lower overheads than brick and mortar, location-based, commercial lease businesses. Those can be very lucrative for the right owner, for someone that is qualified for that type of business. But those businesses can be found for much lower dollar amounts. You've got to have industry experience. Well, the franchisors would really prefer to find someone with good general business management skills, and who will implement and execute a proven system. They will provide training on how to use their system and what you're going to need to know to be successful in that particular vertical. But they're not looking for generally technical experience in the particular industry. So, when you ask why would you want to own a franchise? It can be a great fit. If it's a business a vehicle to get you where you want to go while meeting your lifestyle and financial goals. It can be a great fit if the role of an owner in that particular business is something that you'll enjoy. It can be a great fit when you and your family, your spouse, your partner, those closest to you, have a shared vision for what you're trying to accomplish with the business and what you're willing to sacrifice to make that happen. And it can be a great fit when you're realistic about your budget and you don't overspend, putting yourself in a precarious position to invest in that business. So what about the royalties? Now, why would I pay 5 to 10% of my sales for the life of the investment? It sounds like a lot. And it's a trade-off. It's a risk mitigation play. You are giving away some of your profit in the long term for a better chance of staying in business in the short term, but also in the ongoing years. business is changing so quickly, technology is driving that, and to have a partner in a franchisor that's keeping up with and leveraging new technology is something that you, in all likelihood, they're going to be able to do that more effectively than you would as an individual. So it's kind of a peace of mind issue. At least that's the way I've always thought about it. How does it work? Well, it's a proven systematic approach to starting and, more importantly, staying in business. You've got the experience of the franchisor. They do have the deep experience and background in the particular industry, in the particular vertical, with some track record, and they're going to use that experience to help you replicate that business. There's simplicity. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's a simple business model in terms of implementation and execution. You're going to be provided initial training and ongoing training and support, which takes different forms depending on the franchisor. That's a role that I used to play. It was a significant role of mine when I was working with franchisors to help franchisees in their system. And so that's a particularly personal element for me. The branding, the name recognition, it is expensive and takes a long time to build your own brand. And this is a big part of why franchising's been successful. Back to the systems, sales, marketing, operations, having those best practices in place that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can put into place what's known to work. And then the culture of teamwork, having shared values with the franchisor and your fellow franchisees is a powerful element to franchise ownership. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Hopefully that's come through today. And just as a little preview, in our next webinar, we're going to be talking about building your ideal business model. How do you consider your own entrepreneurial DNA? Where will your customers come from? What is the sales spectrum of types of businesses? And what's going to be necessary for you to find your best fit? We're all different, and there's thousands of options that are out there. How in the world do you find something that's really going to be right for you? You're going to want to consider those business characteristics that are important to you. You're going to think about your short, medium, and long-term goals and plans for what you're trying to achieve with your business and how to get there. And yes, someday you're going to want to exit. You're going to want to sell your business and move on, transition to your next chapter, whatever that may be. So how and why is it important to think about that in the beginning? With regard to your entrepreneurial DNA, FranNet has what's called a personal franchise assessment. This is the link for completing it. It's a proprietary, confidential assessment of your entrepreneurial DNA. You will receive a copy of it. It produces about a 15-page report. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about your assessment so you can kind of understand the results. It may make clear that now is not the right time for you to be starting a business or investing in a franchise. And that's an important thing to understand. After we, and this is another thing I'll talk about in this next session, is your ideal business model. What is that gonna end up looking like? Your competencies, your motives, your values, your preferences for business characteristics, what you're trying to accomplish personally and as a business owner, the other facets that you're gonna wanna think about. So great stuff. For questions and that you have, I'd be happy to answer them. This is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out directly. And I look forward to spending time with you again soon on session number 2, building your ideal business model. So thanks for joining us, and I look forward to connecting.